So, as that finishes up, we are, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to start talking about. We're going to do two things, I guess. We're going to talk a little bit about business models and the context of a couple of businesses that I am working on, if I'm remembering our discussion about this discussion correctly. And then we're going to be talking about value propositions. So the value propositions based on a book. Phil, do you have that book right in front of you? Mine's right over here, but it's hard for me to get.
Bum bum ba-dum.
Value proposition
Unfortunately,
design.
yep,
I like the
there it is.
tags.
And on the back, well, yeah, that's how I organize my mind. Like on the back, you probably can't see it because it's backwards, but it's bad value proposition design in
I've
the
got.
back, and it just basically says, "Don't risk wasting your time and energy, money working on products and services nobody wants. Flip the book over."
Yeah, I've got.
Are
I
these
do
your notes from
everything.
the book?
No, these are just notes from my books, all books that I've
Oh
read.
wow,
I'm trying. If I can, I need. I don't have time for things, but I'm trying to do this thing called a Zettelkasten,
yep,
which is kind of where you take notes and then you sit down. It's a note card system,
yep,
and it's a mind map on note cards. Basically, that's what it is.
yep.
It's more complicated, and there are people who will talk to you about it and tell you what it is and what it isn't online. The best person that I would highly recommend is a guy named Scott Shepper. His last name is spelled Scheper. He's got a wonderful YouTube channel that talks about it, and he just goes on and on and on and on and on about it. His marketing is phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal. He's a marketer, he knows how to do it. His funnel is just like beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. He's got a bit of an attitude about him that reminds me of a certain someone that you and I both know, kind of slimy.
I love slimy people.
Yeah, but at the same time, the stuff that he shares and the stuff that he talks about is absolutely like top notch, and he knows what he's doing. So even though, anyway, long and short of it is, I, I like it. It's good stuff, and it works out in the end. So anyway, okay,
So
so
since we talked about him, I have my own process, and sometimes I use a similar process if I depend on what I'm studying.
okay,
Um, but because I have a fairly good spatial concept memory, right? My mind is a little bit funny. What I like to do is highlight, tag notes, and often just write on the book itself,
yeah.
so that the book becomes a workbook
Do you
rather
know who
than
else likes
just
to do that?
historical reference.
Port is a computer scientist with a university in Washington. I can't remember Washington D.C. I can't. I want to say Georgetown. He's a productivity expert. He's written some really good books, and he talks a lot about that type of stuff. And one of
Hmm.
the big things that he talks about there is, I didn't realize. Hold on, that's not
Slow
good.
Productivity is his recent
Yes,
book by the look of it.
yes. Um, I want to get that book at some point and check it out and see what he says.
Well, we'll do that together. Just remind me later when you get to that stage.
uh,
It came out
he,
in January this year.
yeah,
That's exciting.
yeah. It's a Anyway, he's talked about it a bit over the past year and a half
Hmm.
on his podcast. I haven't actually sat down. Anyway, whatever. Sorry, but he likes to write in his books, and what he'll do is he'll put notes. Him and what's his name, Tim Ferriss. They'll put
Yep.
notes at the front of the book,
Yep.
so that way you can pick up the book and you can look at the notes
Yep.
and get to it very quickly. So I think that's a good method if that's the way you work. My brain doesn't work that way. I like having the I like the Zettelkasten method a lot better.
Uh-huh. For me, it depends what I'm studying and trying to learn. So if if I'm trying to memorize facts, statistics, or visual things like Japanese or Chinese, then
Ooh,
I
yeah.
find these note cards perfect, right? Depends on the randomization. If I'm looking for dense material where the
Mhm,
reference to the other significant amount of information is critical, then I like to do that. If I have and I have a third technique, which is I'll put like a scribble. Like I will like take an entire lecture's notes in the
mhm,
college. I did this. I'd take the entire lecture's notes on one page and I'd start in like the middle and
mhm.
brainstorm it out. And afterwards, you can add multiple layers by doing cards and all that stuff. And if you do this, any of these, if you combine two of these techniques, you master anything quick.
It's part of the reason why when you look at books like this, there's tons of diagrams and things like that in it. So,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. And the difference
oh,
is if you're doing the visual note taking yourself,
yeah,
you're processing the information as you note take.
yep, it's true. That's the big one. Meh,
So passive versus
backtracking.
active learning.
Ah, so
How was that for an introduction to today's course?
welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to
All right, so let me give a quick
go
breakdown
for
of
it.
the book. So the value proposition design, if you look over it, it talks about the core concept is um, adding detail within the business model canvas. And there's two important things that it has. It's like a value proposition canvas and a consumer model.
Hmm.
They call it customer profile. So it has the value map, and I'm just going to throw this up real quick for anybody to see it. I can't see me. Can you see it?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Well,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
nice. So and this fits right into the business model. And the challenge for me as I'm going through this is really like the chicken and the egg concept.
Mm-hmm.
Almost almost everybody starts with just the value map.
Yeah.
Almost every business starts like I'm going to do these jobs, and they're going to give these they're going to give these values, and they're going to help solve these pains,
Yep.
right? And most people even don't think that deep, right? But essentially everybody thinks along those lines. So the it takes that concept one step further by going deeper into the customer profile, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of sections on doing the research and making sure you understand that. And then towards the end of the book, it talks about how to marry the two.
Yes.
So the there's a good section where it takes this organic approach of that value map that you have. So refining the value map a little bit, then of fitting it into a preliminary business model,
Okay.
testing out the value map with the customer profile a little bit, and iterating between the two as you develop it. I think and I think that's the organic way that you go about this,
Uh-huh.
because if you try to create the business model without thinking about the value map of your product, you can lose sight of where you're heading in your original thesis. The But sometimes you have to be prepared to just go in a totally different direction. That said,
Mm.
uh, you want to say something on that?
Mm-mm. I'm just acknowledging what you're saying.
Beautiful, thank you. So the book goes through talking about the canvas, talking about
Mm-hmm.
those two things we just talked about. Then it goes into design thinking, similar section in the business model discussions,
Okay.
where design thinking is the iterative process of being curious and defining and finding the value. Uh, and the first real paragraph in there is design is the active activity of turning your ideas into value proposition prototypes. And then it keeps going a little bit. I love that concept, and I love design exactly for this because it's a creative process. Any design is creative process, right? So design of electrical systems or software
Oh, yeah, yeah.
systems
Yeah.
or business or a yarn business or you name it.
Well, I
right?
mean,
It all
just
starts.
designing, just even sitting down and designing your business itself and how your business operates is a creative process.
It is, and we make a lot of assumptions, and then we end up testing those assumptions. Some the biggest questions are what's the most efficient way to test these assumptions.
Yeah.
The and of course the book doesn't get into it, right? But when I see it, here's the process that I kind of go through. Somebody comes to me with an idea. They're like, I want to make this mobile app that's going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And my first process, if they hire me for the full cycle of it, right? If they
Mm-hmm.
want, my warranties and all the really the brain trust that I can bring,
Mm-hmm.
is sit down, we look at the business value proposition, we look at their product value proposition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we define their process, and I ask them a lot of things they probably never thought about. And
Mm-hmm.
we really end up in the end, we create an early version of their brand.
Yes.
The I'm not like a full brand designer, right? And there's some reasons for that, but essentially
It
what I want to do, go ahead. You have a
yeah,
good thought. I know you're thinking.
yeah, taking becoming a full brand designer and becoming like a brand design shop is it's massive. It's a huge undertaking and requires some very different skills and a
Hmm.
set of skills. There was one company that I was at. They they were a it started off as a boutique app design build place, and eventually they moved transitioned into branding and brand design, and they
Yep.
tried to they recognized that when they were going to do that they needed to hire very different people and work with very different people, and they ended up transitioning away entirely from app work and into brand work, because they were that they found that that was a lot more sustainable than the app work that they were doing. Um, so
It
yeah.
actually is, and there's this is where you build the value. So here's the challenge that every agency discovers, and we all kind of struggle through in our own way. If we just make apps that people ask us to do the way they ask us to do it, 98% fail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is very, very draining on any agency owner, right? He puts his heart and soul into it sometimes, or he just doesn't care, right? It's just a
Yep.
cash process for him. But if he cares, it's hard because he sees a lot of failure and hates to see people wasting their money, right? Every
Mm-hmm.
good creator, every kind of like deep thinker wants to provide value and wants to give a return and to create things, right? That's sustainable and grows. So it's kind of draining to put your efforts into things that just are destined to die.
Yep.
That said, it's a lot of people that don't have the money to do it well in the first place. They're they're they don't have the money in the first place because they don't have the skills to do it well. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have the mindset to do it and to take the time and think through it because they've never gone through that. They don't probably have the money in the first place to afford the process. And if they do have the money, but without the experience, they rather put the money into like creating this full functional app without ever thinking about marketing
Yeah.
or how to grow the business. Right.
Yep.
So it's kind of one of those things. So when you jump that hurdle, you basically just go to people that understand the value of doing this workflow.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason I want to do these series is to show people that they can kind of do both
Mm-hmm.
if they put some work into it,
Mm-hmm.
but they have to slow down a little bit and think the process through,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't expect your developers to do this process at all, right?
No, developers are
This is not a developer task,
no, not even remotely. Developers are very like what they are suited for is what they are suited for. They're like and that's building things.
which is building what they're told to build,
Yeah, yes. It is hard, like sometimes you'll get the few developers who do have a
business
um
sense.
and I was not, I wasn't going to say like business sense. I was going to say like a people sense, who can understand and guess and grasp how people use apps and
Okay,
things.
a little bit of UX experience.
Yeah, to be able to help build out the branding aspect of stuff.
Mhm.
Um,
And these
so
guys are rare, actually, for
yes,
developers. These guys that can
yes,
understand how to create a pleasant customer experience, right?
yes,
But
and,
what we're
and
talking
a,
about is the next level, which is creating a sustainable business.
yes, and even then, you can find someone who is like that, but it is like that person is so small. It is
And they're
just
busy.
that's the other part.
They're busy and they're well paid.
Oh my
and,
gosh, yes.
and yeah, you may find them, but seriously, they can't give you the time you need. You can't afford them. And if
And
you
there's
can
a
afford them,
reason
you can afford the agency in the first place. They can do the whole thing.
why they're well paid because
Yeah, because they're
they
successful.
can yeah.
Yeah, they're little unicorns.
Mhm.
But they normally end up. So there's two paths for these guys. Either they're found early
Yes.
and they're brought into a company and well taken care of,
Yes.
or they kind of evolve into it. And sometimes it happens, when they're a little bit older, right? 30s,
Yep.
40s, 50s, right?
Yeah.
Um, and often that's what it is. They evolve into it. A lot of this is learned, or it's either handed down or learned in most cases.
Well, and then there's the other option where they are like that. They're like that from the beginning, as you said, like where they're
Mhm.
found.
Very, yeah, these are entrepreneurs. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
found
the ones
like,
who are
yeah.
found, but like they're what ends
Have you
well
found
can
any examples of these guys that have this in their 20s that don't have that handed down from either parents or grandparents?
yeah, a few here and there.
Oh, that's cool. I would love
It's
to meet them.
hard. It is so hard to find someone like that. And a lot of that is these are the people who want to experiment and play and do things. They are actually the types of people that end up becoming indie game designers and build and everything. Those are
Mhm.
the ones. The best examples I can give
These
you.
are the born designers.
Yeah, the best success story along those lines that I can explain to anybody or give for anybody is the creator of Stardew Valley. There's a book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. I think is that. Yeah, let me double check if that's the one that I'm thinking of. Um. Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Eric
This.
Barone.
Oh, come on. Show me. That's what I want. Okay. Yeah. So, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels is the book. Highly recommend it for anyone who loves video games and just wants to understand more about it. Just be careful, but in general, from my experience, a lot of the people who are video game not designers, but journalists, games journalists, are very very left leaning. So Jason Schreier, who's the author of Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, he wrote that book, and then he wrote the next one, Press Reset: Ruin and Recovery in the Video Game Industry, which is basically talks about the grind of the video game industry, which it is
Hmm.
a grind where you go and you are working on a game like a massive amount of time for like 6 to 8 months, and like it grinds you down, and then once you release the game, you're gone. They fire everybody basically at that point, because at that point the game goes into maintenance mode.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
But
that's why when I'm like, somebody's like, I want to be a video game developer. I'm like, oh, you want to learn the hardest programming languages, suffer for 15 to 20 years before you make any kind of money, and
Yep,
then
yep,
be a little recycled toy.
That's it. Is it's you become a recycled toy, and the author advocates a, oh, I want a union for video game people. I'm like, you don't understand. You have
You
no
should
clue
make a
what.
union for video game developers.
Yeah,
India will get every job ever.
that's exactly it. Yes,
Yep.
like it's
Unions in software
already
development, dumbest
it's
idea possible.
it's already happening. So come on, people.